Skill, a word that is thrown around often in archery. Sometimes it's used to assess an individual. Sometimes it's used to compare two different athletes. Sometimes it's used to compare two different styles. Sometimes it's used objectively. Sometimes it's used in a derogatory way. It's used by non-archers.
Oh, you do archery? How good are you at archery?
Oh, I'm this good. It's used by archers against other archers. This kind of archery takes less skill than this kind of archery. Skill, a word we all understand but few of us can explain. And because of that, whenever we bring up skill, we get into arguments because we all come in with different understandings of what makes a person skillful. So I'm here to lay down a definition of skill and get you to think about what skill means before you apply it to other people. Skill is a measure of how proficient a person is. I think we can all agree with that. The more skillful you are at something, the better you are at it. What we often miss in our analysis of skill is that skill must be measurable. Skill isn't or doesn't have to be an abstract concept that we vaguely apply to someone. Skill should have some kind of metric. This metric may be objective. This may be subjective, but it has to be measurable. A skilled chef is able to create dishes that taste good. A skilled artist is able to show creativity and complexity. A skilled musician is able to play pieces with confidence and flow. A skilled teacher is able to deliver new content in clear and meaningful ways. So what is a skilled archer? A skilled archer can hit their target. That's it. This is something that can be measured. The frequency of bullseyes, the size of groupings, the points on the scorecard. You might wonder about form. Form is a big part of archery. You can observe and analyze a person's shot process or comment on the cleanness of their release, but archery is not a performance art. You can have the best form, but if you can't hit the target, it means nothing. Skill at archery simply means hitting the target. That is all. If your definition of skill is different to what I've stated, then you are bringing something more into the picture. A personal opinion, a biased perspective, an intrinsic value, a hidden agenda. And I'm going to refute some of these perceptions of skill. You might say that a skilled archer is able to use a heavy draw weight. No, that just means you are a stronger archer. You might say that a skilled archer must be able to loose 3 arrows in 1.5 seconds. No, that just means you are a fast shooter. You might say that a skilled archer is able to use a variety of different bow types on foot and on horseback ambidextrously. If you can do that, then you are a versatile archer. None of this matters if you can't hit your target. This is, in my opinion, the only qualifying factor that is relevant when discussing someone's skill. Their ability to hit the target irrespective of what kind of bow they are using or what technique they use is what defines their skill. A person practicing a particular form of archery might have additional parameters, and we may have to measure skill within those parameters. But that means we can't just take those measurements and apply them equally to a different set of parameters. So now we come to the main event, the trad shooter complex. The purists who believe that shooting instinctively with a traditional bow is the most skillful form of archery. Firstly, I acknowledge, and to an extent agree, with the general perception that because this particular style of archery is more difficult, that it takes more skill. However, the part that often gets overlooked is whether you are able to reach a level of proficiency within this chosen discipline. Let's say that I am shooting an indoor round and I achieve a certain score with a compound bow. You do the same round and with a traditional bow you get a similar score. Considering that it is generally easier to shoot accurately with a compound bow, I would believe that you are certainly a more skillful archer. Basically, if I get outshot by a traditional bare bow shooter, I've got a lot to work on. But let's say we go back to 70 meters. This time, my compound bow scores 300 points more than your bare bow. Who is the more skillful archer? Can a traditional shooter really claim that they have more skill if they attempt a task that has a higher difficulty but achieves a lower result? Are we simply going to blame our choice of equipment? Do I have less skill than you simply because I'm shooting a compound and you're shooting a longbow, irrespective of what our scores were? Obviously, I can't claim to be the better archer because I've got the training wheels. But can you claim to be a better archer on the basis that you are using the purest form of archery? And so we come back to our definition of skill: the person's ability to hit the target. Every archer will agree that it is the person, not the bow, that does the work. We're not putting our bows into shooting machines and counting the bullseyes. It's up to us to execute that perfect shot, and the mistakes are our own. But that is not always the case. Sometimes it is our equipment that is letting us down. Some bow types will lose more energy in vibration. Some materials are naturally going to be more inconsistent in varying conditions. Some equipment choices will limit the effective range of the shooter. There is a reason why you never see bare bow shooters at Olympic level. The bow type is legal in Olympic competition, but no bare bow shooter, even modern bare bow shooters, have ever shot the minimum qualifying score for an Olympic team. Not even close. So bare bow shooters can't consistently hit a target at long distance. Do we blame the archer or do we fault the equipment? How do we know that a bare bow shooter's score was a result of target panic or fluctuating temperatures? How many points were lost as a result of the limitations of the bows and arrows used? If you are truly going to measure someone's skill, then logically you have to take equipment out of the equation. Let there be no differences in equipment. Let's make everyone shoot a 15-meter round with Genesis bows. Standardized distance, standardized bows. No one is advantaged or disadvantaged. May the best archer win. But let's go further. Since forever, traditional bows have been touted as requiring the most skill to use. However, one can argue that compound bows demand the most skill. Why? Because of the same argument that is used against compound bows. They do all the work. They've got stabilizers and sights and cams. They're so mechanical, you literally have to pull the trigger. So if the compound bow is engineered to do all the work, that means that every mistake must be the fault of the archer. It is up to the archer to execute the perfect shot every single time. Is that not the perfect definition of skill? If the equipment and the technology is so consistent that it removes nearly every variable in the bow, then the only variable is the archer. Any compound shooter will blame themselves for a bad shot. And truly, if compound bows remove all skill, why do we still see a score gap, even at the highest levels? Why can't every archer pick up a compound bow and shoot perfect scores? And I don't care if it looks boring to you. Have you considered that perfection is boring? If you got out of compound archery and you enjoy instinctive bare bow, have you considered that it isn't really skill, but thrill. Does the thought that the arrow might hit the target and it might not excite you? That's it, isn't it? It isn't just the simplicity or the naturalness of barebow. You're really a thrill seeker who thrives on having some control, but not complete control, over what happens with your shot. Because now you've realized the true meaning of the archer's paradox, that you want to achieve the perfect shot, but you forfeited the ability to do so. But you love the feeling of getting as close as you can. That is our skill spectrum, from crossbows and compounds to recurve and traditional. And yet even in traditional, we still have a skill difference between barebow shooters who string walk and instinctive shooters who ban all aiming methods in competition. The reality is that this spectrum is not about how much skill is required, but the relationship between the bow and its user. For recurves, Olympic or traditional, just because you execute a flawless shot process doesn't mean the arrow is guaranteed to find its mark. How good you are at controlling what you can is the mark of a skilled archer.